We all know Power Rangers from our past. To be honest, this is not a Power Ranger movie, but a famous live-action movie called Gatchaman. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join Patreon for more fun recaps. Worlds suddenly got attacked by an organization called Galactor. These are highly advanced species, and soon humans realized that their weapons are ineffective against them. They have some kind of shield and otherworldly powers. However, humans found a ray of hope in some ancient stones. So these stones chose some humans as their wielder and gave them powers to counter Galactor's shields. They are called receptors. During the European War, 3 children, who are part of this experiment, talk about soon getting selected by the stones. Later, when their base gets attacked by the Galactors, one of them named Ken shows the unwavering spirit and manages to unlock the power of the stone. He becomes the youngest receptor in existence. 13 years passed from that incident and people are still living in a constant fear of being attacked anytime. A young girl named June goes to a cafe to pick up her younger brother, Jimpy. He's hacking into some databases to look for some info. They then leave the cafe. Meanwhile, 2 more characters get introduced, Ryu and Ken. Oh, he's the same Ken from 13 years back. He receives a message on the upcoming Galactor threat, and all 4 of them assemble at one place. Yeah, they all are actually a team. Suddenly, a giant wolf falls from the sky and starts heading to a building where all the leaders from the world are having a meeting. They are basically discussing Galactors. So according to the research, when a particular substance called X virus enters the human body, it replaces some of the DNA and transforms the person into a Galactor. However, the percentage of this happening is like 1%, and the rest 99% end up dead. On the other hand, receptors receive their powers from the ancient stones, and for some reason, the stone acts like X virus just without brainwashing stuff. Suddenly, the authorities hear the alarm that the city is getting attacked, but the Professor Nambu calms them down, saying his receptors will take care of it. The military tries to shoot the wheel, however it fails. Some Galactors come from the wheel and start attacking the military. Suddenly, Ken comes in his superhero uniform and saves the officers. The other 3 also join, and together they start taking on the Galactors. As I said earlier, only receptors can damage the Galactors. After taking care of them, they try to slow down the wheel using Spider-Man tactics. Well, it sure fails, however. June quickly takes this chance and enters inside the wheel to disable it from inside. Suddenly, 3 advanced-level Galactors come to the scene and engage in a fight with the rest of them. They have an intense fight, and trust me when I say intense. Meanwhile, Jinpei gets cornered by one of the advanced Galactors. However, an unknown receptor comes to his rescue. He takes down the enemy. June also returns, completing her task. Ken recognizes this new guy as George, and they even fist bump to show their friendship. Later, June asks Ken about how he knows George. So it turns out he's the other boy we saw at the start of the movie. He was also an experiment subject for stones. So Ken doesn't talk to her much and leaves. Later, during their routine checkup, everyone starts teasing June. So it turns out she proposed to Ken in the past, but he just rejected her. George interfaces this conversation, saying it might be because of Naomi. This makes June a little jealous. I mean, she has a competition now. Later, George goes to meet Ken at the cliff and they talk about the old times. Ken wonders why he has joined Receptors again. So he is here just to take revenge for Naomi. Yeah, the 3rd girl of the trio who's dead apparently. Meanwhile, Professor Kirkland informs Nambu about his success in making a weapon to destroy Galactors. He has the key implanted inside his neck so that only he can access the weapon. After some time, Nambu informs Ken about the movements of Berg Katza, aka the leader of Galactors. Apparently, he used this previous attack as a distraction and teleported to Tokyo. Nambu suspects that his target is Iria, who's actually a Galactor but also their informant. So their mission is now to protect this Iria guy and escort him back to the base. He later explains this mission to his team. George is shocked seeing Ken taking this so lightly. I mean, Iria is the one who unalived Naomi in the past. However, for Ken, his duty as a receptor comes first, then revenge. So the team comes to Tokyo. Their mission is to infiltrate a secret event Iria is attending. Ken and June disguises as a couple and tries to enter the event. So Jimpy fakes their identity and adds them to the guest list by hacking into their server. Meanwhile, George is definitely up to something. June is a little upset with all this Naomi situation. We then see the past incident from 5 years back. During a mission, George proposes to her. Ken is a little upset with this outcome. I mean, deep inside, he also has feelings for her. Naomi even looks at him, but he stays silent. So in the end, she accepts his proposal. Ken and June finally meet Iria. He recognizes Ken from back then. Meanwhile, Jinpei notices some error in George's communication device. So basically, George malfunctions the device and he even lures Ryu and traps him. When Ken comes near the car, George attacks Iria. However, Ken holds him at gunpoint. George tries to convince Ken that they need to unalive him for Naomi. Ken shoots George with fake bullets. So in another flashback, their bus gets attacked by Galactors. George gets injured and Ken somehow survives. He gets angry and goes after the Galactors. Iria from that time shoots him with his powers. However, Naomi comes between them and ends up dead. Ken feels responsible for her death. He basically never forgave himself for this mistake and ended up taking a pledge to always follow orders. Coming back to the present, they take Iria to their base where he gets placed in high security. Ken tries to interrogate Galactor's plan. Basically, Iria doesn't know the details about the plan, as it is something only the leader, aka Bergkatze, knows. However, he knows that they are planning to attack Tokyo next. Meanwhile, everyone hears the information Iria just gave and comes to the conclusion that they need to fire this weapon at their base near Tokyo. Suddenly, Iria provokes Kirkland by telling him about how he tortured his wife and unalived her. Ken then goes to his team and tells them about decisions. So the weapon they are talking about is integrated in the satellite, and it is connected to Kirkland's neural system. It has the power to blow their base. However, the human prisoners who are trapped in the base are going to get sacrificed. The team finds this mission to be cruel, but Ken is ready to follow it. Professor Kirkland goes to meet Iria with Jinpei. He is very angry and goes to take his life. However, he takes down every guard in the room. Even Jinpei is no match for his power. He then takes Professor Kirkland with him. Alarm starts ringing and Professor Nanbu quickly orders Ken to capture Iria. Meanwhile, Ryu goes to save Jinpei. He is shocked that Ken is more centered around following the orders than saving his teammate. As Iria is getting ready to leave, George comes again for his revenge. However, something shocking happens. Iria reveals his true identity, and it turns out to be Naomi. This completely shocks George and he thinks it's some kind of trick. But Naomi kisses him to confirm that it's the same Naomi from before. She even shows the ring which George gave her while proposing. So Naomi never died, as her body was taken away by Galactors. They then implanted her with X-Virus and her mind got corrupted. She then became the leader of the Galactors. Yeah, she's Bergkatze. George is in complete shock still, and on the other side, Professor Nanbu is hearing all this conversation. So apparently, she injected the same X-Virus into George when she kissed him. It starts affecting his mind. Naomi then escapes with Professor Kirkland. Nanbu later remembers about meeting the trio for the first time. He surely cares for them as their kids. He then informs Ken that the situation is dire now. Berg's plan was to capture the professor and use his weapons to destroy Earth. Being an informant was just a fake facade. However, the stone somehow stops the corruption process. On the other side, Naomi takes the professor to their base. She brainwashes him with her powers and takes control of the weapon. The satellite weapon starts activating. Professor Nanbu quickly orders the team to go to their base and retrieve Kirkland. Even though it's a dangerous mission, Ken accepts it without thinking. The whole team, including George, gets ready to leave. Their only way to reach Galactor's base is through a new flying plane called Phoenix. Even though it is still in the prototype phase, Ken and the team are ready to take this risk. They quickly leave as the clock has started ticking and they have only 10 minutes to stop the weapon. The weapon is set to attack all the famous cities across the globe. The team somehow penetrates the shield of the base and enters. They quickly engage in a fight with the Galactors, while George goes to confront Naomi. Oh, and Ken still doesn't know about Naomi being alive. So the team somehow takes out the Galactors and split up. Ken goes to find George while the other three go to the professor. Meanwhile, George fights with Naomi and tries to put her back to her senses. However, it doesn't work and she corners him. Fortunately, Ken comes to his rescue. He fights Naomi, who's in the form of Berg. Her helmet gets damaged and face reveals. Ken gets shocked seeing Naomi still alive. He was feeling guilty for all these years and now she is standing in front of him. Meanwhile, they see the professor and even try to wake him up. However, nothing works. So in the end, Jinpei hacks into his chip integrated inside his neck. He manages to divert most of the attacks. While diverting the last attack on Tokyo, the professor wakes up and the security system triggers. So now only a few minutes have left for the attack. Naomi learns about the professor's death and quickly goes to the cockpit. George follows her. However, Ken is still trying to process this shock. So Naomi takes control of the base and the entire base goes into space. She is planning to manually control the weapon and destroy humanity. George again tries to stop her, but she completely defeats him again. She then kisses him again and injects more X-Virus into him. He starts suffering from the pain. The stone is trying to resist the attack from the X-Virus. Ken comes out of nowhere and attacks Naomi. In a swift blow, he stabs her and activates his stone powers. She then tries to trick him by saying that she has come to her senses and she's the old Naomi again. However, George asks Ken to not stop and close this chapter once and for all. He deals the finishing blow, and while dying, for a split second, she whispers her true feelings. Yeah, she also loved Ken, but just stayed silent that day. Everything ends, however the beam from the satellite is about to shoot, so the remaining team quickly shifts the direction of the base between the attacks. The base gets destroyed and everyone escapes safely in the Phoenix. With a fist bump between two old friends, the title rolls, the end.